I still remember the chlorine smell that hung in the air at McKinley High's indoor pool in the fall of 1963. I was 17, a junior who'd never been particularly good at anything athletic, but my guidance counselor insisted I needed an extracurricular activity for my college applications. Swimming seemed like the safest option. I could already keep myself afloat, and unlike football or basketball, I wouldn't have to worry about getting tackled or elbowed in the face. So I showed up to tryouts on a Tuesday afternoon in September, nervous and self-conscious in my new swim trunks. And that's when I first saw Coach Reed Harrison. He was 26 years old, though he seemed impossibly mature and confident to my teenage eyes. He had dark hair that was always slightly damp from the pool, broad shoulders from his own years of competitive swimming, and this way of looking at you that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. When he called my name from his clipboard, Dylan Matthews, I raised my hand and he gave me this small, encouraging nod that somehow made my heart beat faster. I told myself it was just nerves about having to swim in front of everyone. The tryout was a disaster. I could swim, technically, but I had no form, no speed, no technique whatsoever. I flailed through 2 laps of freestyle while the other guys cut through the water like they'd been born in it. When I finally hauled myself out of the pool, gasping and humiliated, I was ready to grab my towel and never come back. But Coach Harrison walked over to me, crouched down so we were at eye level, and said something I've never forgotten. "Dylan, you've got heart. I saw you fighting through every stroke. Heart can be coached into skill, but skill without heart is just going through the motions. If you're willing to put in the work, I'm willing to teach you everything I know." I made the team, barely. I was put in the slowest lane with the other beginners, but Coach Harrison was true to his word. He stayed after practice 3 days a week to work with me privately, breaking down every aspect of my stroke, teaching me how to breathe properly, how to kick from my hips instead of my knees, how to feel the water instead of fighting against it. Those extra sessions became the highlight of my week. It wasn't just about swimming. He'd ask me about my classes, my family, what I wanted to do after high school. I found myself telling him things I'd never told anyone, about how I felt different from the other guys, about how I didn't quite fit in anywhere, about how I was terrified of disappointing my father who wanted me to be more masculine, more athletic, more everything I wasn't. Coach Harrison never made me feel strange for opening up. He'd listen with this focused attention, nodding at the right moments, and then he'd share little pieces of his own life. He told me about growing up in a small town in Ohio, about how swimming had been his escape from a difficult home situation, about how he'd moved to our city to start fresh after college. There was something in the way he talked about starting fresh that resonated with me, like he understood what it meant to be searching for a place where you could be yourself. By November, I'd improved dramatically. I wasn't going to win any championships, but I could hold my own in practice, and I'd even placed 4th in my heat at our first meet. More importantly, I'd started to love swimming, to crave that feeling of slicing through the water, of pushing my body to its limits. But if I'm being honest with myself now, what I really craved were those private coaching sessions, being alone with Coach Harrison in the echoing pool area after everyone else had gone home, having his full attention, feeling his hand on my shoulder when he demonstrated proper form, watching the way water droplets caught in his eyelashes when he surfaced from showing me a demonstration. One evening in the early December, after a particularly good practice session, we were both sitting on the edge of the pool, legs dangling in the water, and Coach Harrison turned to me with this serious expression. "Dylan, I want to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. You're special. I don't just mean as a swimmer, though you've come incredibly far. I mean as a person. You're thoughtful and brave and genuine in a way that's rare, especially at your age. Don't let anyone make you feel like you need to be different than who you are. The world is going to try, trust me, but you hold on to yourself." My throat felt tight. "Thank you, Coach. That means everything coming from you." He held my gaze for a moment longer than necessary, and I saw something flicker across his face, some emotion I couldn't quite name. Then he looked away, cleared his throat, and said we should probably head out before the janitor locked us in. We gathered our things in silence, but something had shifted between us. Some invisible line had been drawn and then immediately erased, leaving only the faintest trace that it had ever existed. The Christmas break felt endless. I kept replaying that conversation in my head, analyzing every word, every look. I tried to convince myself I was just grateful for his mentorship, that he was simply a coach who cared about his athletes. But late at night, alone in my room, I couldn't deny the truth I'd been avoiding for months. I had feelings for Coach Harrison, real feelings, the kind that made my chest ache and my hands shake, the kind that I'd been taught were wrong, sinful, impossible. It was 1963, and boys like me didn't have words for what we felt, at least not words we could say out loud without risking everything. When we returned to school in January, I was determined to create some distance, to protect both of us from my inappropriate feelings. I started making excuses to skip the extra coaching sessions. I avoided eye contact during practice. I could see the confusion and hurt in Coach Harrison's face, but I didn't know what else to do. How could I explain that being near him had become both the best and most painful part of my day? That I was terrified he'd somehow see the truth written all over my face? After 2 weeks of my avoidance, Coach Harrison asked me to stay after practice. The other guys filed out, their voices echoing off the tile walls, and then it was just the two of us again. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me with those patient eyes that seemed to see right through every defense I'd built up. Finally, he spoke. "Did I do something wrong, Dylan? Because if I crossed a line or made you uncomfortable, I need you to tell me. You've been avoiding me and I can't figure out what happened." "No, Coach, you didn't do anything wrong. I needed to focus more on my schoolwork and I didn't want to take up so much of your time." The lie tasted bitter in my mouth. He studied me for a long moment and I could see him deciding something, weighing his words carefully. "Dylan, I'm going to be honest with you and I need you to know that I'm taking a risk here, probably the biggest risk of my life. But I hope that you'll understand. I look forward to our sessions together more than anything else in my week. Not because of the coaching, but because of you. Because of who you are and how you make me feel. And if I'm completely misreading this situation, if I'm about to make the worst mistake of my career, then I apologize and we can pretend this conversation never happened. But I don't think I'm misreading it. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What are you saying?" He took a step closer, close enough that I could see his chest rising and falling with nervous breaths. "I'm saying that I have feelings for you, Dylan. Feelings that go beyond coaching, beyond friendship. I'm saying that I think you might feel the same way, and that terrifies me because of what it could mean for both of us, but especially for you. I'm saying that I've been fighting this for months, telling myself I'm crazy, that I'm seeing things that aren't there, but I can't keep pretending anymore. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was whisper, 'I do feel the same way. I've been so scared.'" He closed his eyes like I'd just lifted an enormous weight off his shoulders. "God, Dylan, I've been so scared too. You have no idea." We stood there in the chlorinated silence, the pool lights reflecting off the water and casting rippling patterns on the walls, and I realized that everything was about to change. "I'm 17, I said quietly. "You're my coach. I know. Believe me, I know. That's why this is so complicated. That's why we have to be incredibly careful. But I also know that what I feel for you is real, and I don't think I can go back to pretending it isn't." We didn't touch that night. We just talked, really talked. about everything we'd been feeling and hiding. Coach Harrison explained that he'd known he was different since he was my age, that he'd spent years trying to deny it, trying to fit into the normal life everyone expected. He told me about the loneliness of living in secret, of never being able to be fully honest with anyone. And I told him about my own confusion and fear, about the shame I felt for wanting something the world said was wrong. It was the most honest conversation I'd ever had with another human being. We decided that night that we wouldn't act on our feelings, not while I was still in school, not while he was my coach. It was too risky, too complicated, too potentially destructive for both our lives. But we also agreed that what we felt was real and worth protecting. We'd continue the coaching sessions, continue our friendship, and wait. Wait until I graduated, until the power dynamic shifted, until we could explore what this connection between us might become without risking his career or my future. Those next 5 months were the sweetest torture I've ever experienced. Every practice, every coaching session, every accidental brush of hands or shared glance was loaded with meaning and restraint. We developed our own private language, little codes and inside jokes that felt like love letters we couldn't actually write. He'd critique my butterfly stroke and I'd hear, "I'm proud of you." I'd shave 2 seconds off my freestyle time and he'd grip my shoulder in congratulations and I'd feel, "I care about you," in the pressure of his fingers. We existed in this suspended state of almost, of not yet, of someday. My swimming improved dramatically. I think it was because every lap I swam was for him. Every competition was a chance to make him proud. By spring, I'd moved up to the middle lane, and I'd placed second in the 100-meter freestyle at districts. Coach Harrison tried to stay professionally neutral during meets, but I'd catch him watching me with this barely contained pride that made my whole body feel warm. After I touched the wall in second place, gasping and triumphant, he was there with a towel and a water bottle, and he said loud enough for others to hear, "Great swim, Matthews." Then, quieter, just for me, "You were beautiful out there." Graduation came on a hot June evening in 1964. I walked across that stage, accepted my diploma, and felt like I was walking toward a future that might actually include happiness. Coach Harrison was in the audience with the other faculty members, and when I looked his way, he gave me that same small nod he'd given me at tryouts 9 months earlier. But this time, it felt like a promise, like he was saying, "Now we can begin." We waited 2 weeks before we saw each other outside of school. He'd officially stopped being my coach the day I graduated, but we both knew we needed to be cautious. We met at a diner in the next town over, somewhere we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew. Sitting across from each other in that vinyl booth, no longer separated by the roles of coach and athlete, felt surreal. "Hi," I said, suddenly shy. "Hi," he replied, and his smile was different than I'd ever seen it, more open, more hopeful. We talked for 3 hours, drinking coffee and picking at pie, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. When he drove me home that night, he parked a block away from my house, and we sat in his car in the darkness. "Can I hold your hand?" he asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and when his fingers laced through mine, I felt like I might cry from the simple rightness of it. We started seeing each other regularly that summer, always carefully, always in places where we wouldn't be recognized. We'd drive to other towns, take long walks in parks where no one knew us, sit by lakes and talk until the sun went down. He taught me that love didn't have to be loud or public to be real. He showed me that 2 people could create their own world in the spaces between the one that didn't accept them. And slowly, carefully, we built something beautiful in secret. One night in late July, parked by a reservoir under a sky full of stars, he turned to me and said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer before you give it. I'm planning to move to California next year. There are communities there, places where people like us can live more openly. Not completely open, not yet, but more than here. I want you to come with me, Dylan. I want us to build a life together, but I need you to understand what that means. It means leaving your family, probably forever. It means living carefully, always looking over our shoulder. It means choosing a harder path because the easy one isn't available to people like us. So I need you to think about whether you can do that, whether you want to do that, whether I'm worth that sacrifice. I didn't need to think about it. I'd been thinking about it since that day in December when I first admitted to myself what I felt. Reed, I said, using his first name for only the third or fourth time. You're not a sacrifice. You're the first thing I've ever wanted that feels completely true. Yes. Whatever it takes, wherever we need to go. Yes. He kissed me then, our first real kiss, and it felt like coming home to a place I'd never been, but had always been searching for. We moved to San Francisco in the spring of 1965. I was 19, he was 28, and we were terrified and hopeful in equal measure. We told people we were cousins, then later just roommates. We found jobs, made careful friends, built a life in the margins. It wasn't the life we would have chosen if the world had been different, but it was ours. We had 43 years together before he died in 2008. 43 years of private love, of stolen moments made precious by their secrecy, of building a home in a world that didn't have space for us. People ask me sometimes if I regret it, if I wish we'd lived in a different time when we could have been open about who we were to each other. And yes, of course, I wish that. I wish we could have gotten married, could have held hands in public, could have introduced each other as what we really were instead of the careful euphemisms we used. But I don't regret him. I don't regret a single day of the life we built together. Reed believed in me when I was a clumsy 17-year-old who couldn't swim a decent lap, and when he asked me to believe in him back, to believe that what we felt was worth the risk and the sacrifice, I said yes. That yes was the best decision I ever made. He was the love of my life, and I was his, and no amount of secrecy or difficulty could diminish that truth. Sometimes I still dream about that pool at McKinley High, about the way the lights reflected off the water, about the moment when everything changed. And I wake up grateful that I was brave enough, that we both were, to reach for something real in a world that told us it was impossible.